All right, everybody, here we are with Warrior Poet Project number 4.5. Warrior Poet Project number 4. We had some audio difficulties halfway through, so it ended up being a largely private conversation between myself and my friend Brian Jimerson, a very successful commodities and futures trader who's been focused on trading currencies as of late. And we were speaking largely about the economic crisis in Europe and how that could potentially spread and the ramifications of that. We lost about 35 minutes in there, but we were just getting warmed up anyway. So I'll bring you up to speed on kind of some of what we talked about, and then splice that in with the remainder of the conversation where we go all the way to talking about the bath salt zombie apocalypse. So basically, where we started was discussing a little bit what he does as a commodities and a futures trader trading currencies. Basically, he's taking the value of one currency and crossing it against the value of another and hoping that that ratio moves in his favor. Now, the ratio of currencies change because people are always changing the influx of money and putting their money in different currencies for different reasons. One of the main reasons, however, though, is interest rates. So if you're here with the US dollar and you have just hypothetically, let's say you're only getting 1% interest on the US dollar. It's more than that. But in the euro, you're getting a 5% interest rate. Well, if you're a big institution or a large wealthy individual, it makes more sense for you to hold euros rather than dollars as your private bank account savings, because you're going to get paid an extra 5% interest or extra 4% over what you would get in the US. Now, a lot of factors and a lot of the arbitrage in between currencies has to do with people betting on what these interest rate changes are going to be. And the biggest indicator of what the interest rate changes are going to be are the strength of the economy. In a really strong economy where everybody's spending and everything is good, the national banks are going to raise the interest rates to try and incentivize people to keep money in the banks and to kind of combat the natural inflation that happens in these growth periods. So they'll raise interest rates so you have more incentive to keep your money in the bank. This is obviously very simple explanation of it. But in times of a bad economy, they're going to drop the interest rates to give you incentives to go out and spend and buy and create and take in loans. If the interest rates are really low, you're way more likely to buy something on credit and then be able to start a business or at least stimulate the economy in that way. So that's called an easing monetary policy, where they drop the interest rates to stimulate the loans being taken out. Conversely, when it's a high interest rate, it's a disincentive for people to take loans because they're going to have to pay back a much higher interest rate than they normally would have. So he's, commodities and futures trader. This is, probably $1 trillion industry. It's huge, one of the biggest games in the world. Some of the smartest individuals are doing it, and some of the very best I've actually had the honor of knowing and meeting, like Paul Tudor Jones, Bruce Kovner. A lot of these guys, they're edging out maybe 20% on returns on a year, and that's phenomenal. I mean, if you leave your money in the bank, like we were just talking, you're going to get, a couple percent interest back if you have a very high yield account. So it makes sense to give these guys large amounts of money, and a lot of them, like Paul Jones, for example, and Bruce Kovner, have like $10 billion under management that they're trading. And they'll grind out, in a good year, 20%. And if you can grind out 20%, over a long period of time, the money is just going to flood in. You're going to have to cap it off. People are going to be knocking down your door if you're consistent there. Brian this year has put in a remarkable 60% return on investment in his commodities accounts, and which is really pretty outstanding. He's what you would call a technical analyst, which is someone who analyzes basically the charts of these currencies and using the charts as indicators of the direction and sentiment of the market. And as opposed to a fundamental analyst who takes kind of longer positions and longer kind of macro views on things. But I think actually, in truth, Brian combines a little fundamental analysis with his technical analysis, as all people do. But he's been very successful in that. So I thought I would opportune to take the time to discuss with him some of the issues going on in this European crisis that is becoming more and more prescient and could affect us even more. So beyond that, what we talked about is one other kind of tangential thing that I wanted to bring up that got lost there is there's figuring out ways that we can help our economy grow there was one example that came from the Depression in the 1930s, and the example was from the Hungarian town or Austrian town of Wörgl, W-O-R-G-L. And in this town, actually, they did something completely revolutionary. They actually created a negative interest rate. So they were facing a depression, and they created a negative interest rate. And what that incited people to do is, instead of leaving money in the banks, they took that money out, and they were spending it rapidly. They were helping their neighbors. They were investing in businesses. They were buying assets. They were doing things. So in the case of a major depression, really incentivizing people to spend their money is certainly one way to go. But the problem is, like in Japan, they can drop the interest rate all the way down to zero, and all of a sudden that's still no longer a stimulus. So what the country did in Wörgl, what the town did in Wörgl, was they created a negative interest rate. So there was almost like a expiration, a stamp on these currencies that got less valuable as they held it over time. And that was wildly successful. And obviously, with most of these wildly successful experiments, the main government comes in and shuts it down. But it's something to research if you guys wanted to take a look at it. And again, it's the town's W-O-R-G-L. And you'll hear kind of an interesting story about that. But more to the point of what we were discussing is, if Greece leaves and if Spain leaves, what are the ramifications, and then what should we do about it? We get to talk about what we should do about it in the audio section that has remained and survived through the computer crash. But we didn't really, we lost a bit of basically talking through what happens if Greece leaves the euro. Now, there's tons of news about all these bailouts that are coming, and Spain just asked for another 128 billion, and everybody needs more and more money. Basically because, you got to understand, first of all, that these banks, they don't have all the money that you think they do. Everybody has their account balances. Well, they don't have that money. They've loaned that money out. They have a fraction of that amount of money. So if everybody actually demanded, like, okay, bank, give me all my money back, I want cash, or I want to transfer it to somewhere else, well, they can't do that because their money is loaned out. So when they're asking for these bailouts, and part of what puts the pressure on the system is the real estate collapse. When real estate collapses, all these banks have all these mortgages out that they're paying. They actually own these properties, but they're not getting paid any money back for it. So they're just out massive amounts of money, plus their own speculation, which usually goes awry, and they're losing money on their own, being just foolish with their money, which is certainly what most of our banks here in this country did. That combined means that these banks don't have the money to give us our money should we need it, and should we really want it. So that's why they're asking for these bailouts, is to be able to kind of meet the basic demands. So they really do need the money to a certain degree. But the problem is, you keep giving them the money. It's like rewarding this bad behavior and creating this cycle where you keep pushing the ball uphill even farther until it just crashes and splatters down on all of us. So here's basically what happens if Greece leaves the euro. Greece needs more and more money. Their banks are failing. They've had bad accounting. I think in 2009, the new government came in and realized that the debt was like double what the previous administration was reporting. So, very kind of shady politics and accounting going on in Greece in the first place. But anyway, so if Greece leaves, that means that basically everything that's been, all the transactions that have been happening in euros all of a sudden have to happen in drachmas. And drachmas was what the previous currency was before it adopted the euro. So all of a sudden, all of these banks that have all these accounts have to switch over from euros to drachmas. Well, that doesn't happen instantly. There's going to be a freeze. There's going to be panic leading up to it. People aren't going to know what the hell's going on. So to prevent what's called a run on the bank, where everybody just goes and grabs all their money and freaks out, they're actually going to shut the banks down, is most likely what the predictions are. They're going to shut the banks down. And what does that mean when they shut the banks down? That means they shut the ATMs down. That means they shut everything down. That means imports and exports stop. I mean, how do you pay for anything if you can't have any banking transactions or know what currency and what value of the currency the other person's going to get? So that means the food supplies stop coming in. Means people aren't getting paid their wages. That means basically a massive period where it gets really rough and there's just huge civil unrest. So in that period, not even the cops or the soldiers are even getting paid. So it's like, who's going to keep order here? Oh, the honorable people, but you're relying on honor of everybody, and that's iffy situation in any country, not just Greece. Relying on people's honor, in a panic situation where they're hungry, they don't know what the hell's going on. It could get really ugly fast. But eventually, the government will set the value of drachmas to euros. Well, they're going to probably set it at 1-to-1, right? But that's completely nonsensical thinking. Immediately when that happens, everybody's going to sell all their drachmas and buy euros with them. They're going to buy euros with the drachmas. So the drachma is going to immediately devalue itself, and it's going to come crashing down. And when that happens, everybody's store of wealth gets less. The amount of money they're earning per paycheck is less valuable. Their savings is less valuable. GDP is going to fall. The government's going to have, because GDP is going to fall and their revenues are going to be down as a government, they're going to have to print the shit out of money. It's going to hike the interest rates. It's going to hike the interest rates up, and the borrowing costs are going to go way up for people trying to take out loans to start businesses. I mean, full-scale depression in Greece. A really kind of ugly situation. But that's when, if that is allowed to happen, there was a famous economist named Joseph Schumpeter, and Schumpeter said a depression is for capitalism like a nice cold shower. Because what happens is the market will eventually correct itself. The costs are going to go down as people's wages go down. And then the productivity is going to start to rise again. And the cheaper drachma is going to really boost exports and tourism because people are going to want to buy cheaper Greek goods. And Greece is a huge shipping country. So people will buy the cheaper Greek goods. They're going to go visit Greece on the cheap. Greece is great for tourism. So there's going to be a huge stimulus that's going to come back into Greece and start to build once that happens. So that's the silver lining eventually, if you can get through it. And the problem is that, any kind of recession or depression naturally has this effect if the market is allowed to do that. But we don't have the stomach for it anymore. We don't have the stomach for a depression or even a hard recession. We're just not accustomed to having to deal with that. So there's no natural counterbalance. So the counterbalance is these continual bailouts and stimuluses. Well, eventually the money's going to run out and the musical chairs are going to stop. And if we don't allow some of these recessions or depressions to take place, then it's just going to get worse when it happens because it's going to happen as a force. And that's maybe kind of the situation that we're already in. So it's kind of with mixed feelings. I mean, the social unrest aspect is going to be dramatic. It's going to be harsh. But ultimately, it's probably what's needed to correct the system. Now, if Greece doesn't leave the euro and it's like this cancerous black hole of money that they just keep trying to throw more money in, like Spain is right now, that could drag the whole euro down and create a massive euro-wide crisis. So it's this dilemma of whether to cut the cancer out or try and keep supporting it. But the problem is if Greece leaves, then it's not the only one in bad shape by a fucking long shot. Then Spain is the next one in line. So people are going to have less faith in their Spanish currency. They don't want their Spanish euros to turn into Spanish pesetas, and become devalued as well. So they're going to push all their money out of the Spanish banks, and there's going to be a Spanish crisis. And then Italy's going to look around. They don't want fucking liras anymore. They want euros. Liras, they saw what happened to the drachma. The drachma dropped 50% in value immediately, so they don't want half of their money to go away. Who wants half of their money to go away? So they start moving it. So the crisis starts to spread. And where does it stop? I mean, Germany is really one of the only countries that has any kind of financial stability here, but it's the one footing all the bills currently as well. So it could create this kind of panic situation. But in the interim, how does this affect us? Well, when this starts to happen, people are not only going to take their money out of these countries and put them in euros, they're going to buy dollars with them. And they're going to take their currency and they're going to convert it into dollars, just like you would if you were on a vacation, and you're converting your currency, except this is happening in a massive scale and big bank transactions, not little tellers that make you show your passport and get a little cash at a terrible interest rate. This is talking about major players, trillions of dollars that are going to start flowing through. So the dollar is going to get really, really strong. Well, that may sound good. Yeah, good, strong dollar. We're U.S. We have a good, strong, powerful dollar. Well, that's actually not very good for us because what happens then? Then our goods and services become extremely expensive. Our exports become too expensive for people to buy. So people stop buying them. They buy them from somewhere else. And when our exports fall, then that means fewer jobs. And fewer jobs for Americans, our unemployment is already almost at the worst it's ever been. And when unemployment falls, then the GDP falls. And then all of a sudden, unemployment rises. When unemployment rises, our GDP falls. So then, we're finding ourselves in an even worse situation where, our exports are down. But, conversely, our imports are going to be a little cheaper. So that actually has more pressure because we're going to be buying less stuff domestically because it's cheaper to get it out elsewhere because our dollar is so strong compared to other places. And hell, it's cheaper to go to Monte Carlo than it is to go to Vegas. So even our tourism dollars start leaving the country as well. So it puts this massive downward pressure on our GDP, which really we can't stand to have it right now without some other, negative effects, currently in the system. We're not very stable as it is, as certainly, we have seen in the news and with the kind of unrest that's already around and the malcontent with the unemployment, et cetera. That kind of pressure could be damaging. But again, all of these things, eventually self-correct. And it's this balance between, not overreacting and trying to keep, bailing water in a sinking ship, throwing more good money at bad money, basically, but also maintaining at least a smooth trend. I think the best thing I could hope for would be a smooth transition between all the stages. Even if we have to get to a depression, at least be smart enough to make it smooth so there's not this massive run on the bank, there's not riots in the streets and food grabs and all of this nonsense. So really, if I was creating monetary policy, I would allow the economics to work, but at least try and make it smooth. Be preemptive. Maybe make decisions that are tougher earlier. So it doesn't come out of sheer panic and create further ramifications. So that's a bit kind of where we had been talking with Brian. It was definitely a lively conversation, more so perhaps than my little monologue here, but it should get you up to speed. And I'll splice this in with the rest of the content from Brian, and hopefully you guys enjoy, and we can continue the discussion about economics. All right, thanks a lot. All right, here we are back again from a little audio crash. Here we are on Warrior Poet project number 4. We had about 35 minutes that may be lost to the audio world, but I think we have it saved on the video world. We will certainly have to increase our technical capabilities here at the new podcast studio. I'm pretty sure the government stepped in and shut us down before we created worldwide panic. Created panic in the streets, talking about the economic collapse that may be pending. So where we were, and let me just make sure that... All right, here we are back online on the video side of things as well now. So we have both audio and video live now. Wow, this is really technical capabilities to the utmost here. All right, so here we were talking about somewhere in the issue of what happens when Spain, if and when Spain leaves. Basically, that creates a situation where that country goes into chaos, and because of the kind of interlinked nature of our world economy, then others start to fall. So your analysis was the minute that one currency leaves the euro, those are the dominoes that are going to cause this kind of worldwide economic collapse that you see on these people are worried about on these bunker builder impending disaster shows that you see on the Learning Channel or Discovery Channel, whatever. So that starts the initial dominoes going there, and that's scary to think that that's the first domino, because that's not too far away potentially. I mean, maybe it all pulls out. Maybe the whole thing, kind of comes back up. But it's certainly possible that that first domino could fall.
Oh, very much so. And once it does, it'll definitely set the stage for other countries that, they may see Greece having pulled out and think that Greece is better off, so they may take it as their chance to do the same. And once that happens, there'll be no stopping it.
Yeah, and then, so that all seems kind of far away for us, with the euro and with everything. But
in this day and age, maybe that was true at a certain point in time. You know, there was a bit of import-export business, but at this day and age, the way that money circulates, nothing is truly isolated anymore. You know, I mean, the U.S. dollar and all these European currencies are directly interlocked and interlinked.
Very much so.
All right, so let's say you know, we start to see these dominoes start to fall. You know, and we're just a normal guy, you know, trying to survive and make sense of it. I mean, at what point do we start to go into full kind of preparation mode?
I probably would start making those preparations as soon as that first domino is tipped. You can never be too prepared for anything, I'd like to think, and I think that once that starts to happen, it'll be a very fast situation. I think that nobody's going to want to buy euros if any of the countries leave, because they'll start being worried about the other countries, and they'll see these other countries that are in the euro that need bailouts, and it will create such a worldwide panic of euros that nobody will buy them, and it will just collapse right into the ground. Now, if the euro does start to collapse or Greece pulls out, I would say buy dollars. Now, I say that with a heavy heart because everybody knows how much the dollar is worth these days, but there will be a time while the euro is going through great turmoil that it makes the dollar very, very strong. Now that's
you say buy dollars. Now, for the everyday person, they're like, buy dollars? What do I buy dollars with? I got to buy dollars with dollars.
Right,
so this is only for people who can open a Forex account.
Yes.
To buy dollars, you have to sell another currency in the cross. So you have to buy dollars with euros, or buy dollars with yen, or buy dollars with something else. So just to give you a heads up what he's saying there. So if you do have access to a Forex account and you want to be nifty, what he's saying is there will be a period where that you can sell euros, buy dollars, and make a good amount of money while the money is still valuable, so you can buy more goods.
Yes, very much so. That's exactly what I'm saying. Now, the strong dollar is good and bad. It's good for a while, but if it gets too strong, then it's terrible for the economy, because then exports become very pricey, and nobody wants to pay, you know, a high price for exports that they were once paying a lower price for. So there's going to be a fine line.
When buying a Ford costs as much as buying a Ferrari, you just stop selling Fords across the world.
It's only Ferraris from then on out.
Yeah. so really, but that's a kind of an extreme example. But all the goods and services we make become just way too expensive for other countries to afford, and that becomes a big issue. Now the strength of the dollar is good for other countries, though, perhaps like China. So could the strength of the U.S. dollar, would that help China pull out of their woes?
I think that China is going to be a terribly, terribly devastating event. They're already seeing some economic slowdown, and there's so many people and such a commercial real estate bubble there, along with the residential real estate bubble, that it dwarfs our real estate bubble. There's, you know, the population there is so much higher. I think that once China goes, I'll definitely be investing in my bullets and beef jerky theory immediately, because and I'm not saying China will go. I'm just saying that we all rely on China so much for so many imports that it will be devastating for the entire world to have that economy slow down any more than it's slowing down right now.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. So, all right, so the bullets and beef jerky theory. Let's go a little bit further into this.
Okay.
So let's say, you know, at a certain point the dollar becomes less and less valuable. Now, people have already looked for alternate dollar opportunities, like the Bitcoin thing, which is, you know, something of a fiasco to a certain degree, because
it's a fiasco. It's just more fake money.
It's what you call a fiat currency, anyways. It's backed by nothing. They have machines that are mining new coins out of fucking nothing, you know, and then creating this currency. So really, yeah, all right, maybe there's no regular central bank. Maybe there won't be any kind of hyperinflation because they can control the mining rate of the actual currency. But really,
when the world's going to shit, do you really want to buy Bitcoins?
Yeah, no, you don't want that shit. That's going to be the first shit to go.
Exactly.
You know?
That'll go before dollars.
So the people who are buying Bitcoins, you know, if you still got some of those motherfuckers, you probably want to get out of that shit. You know, I mean, although you could have maybe scalped. I mean, the volatility in Bitcoins is huge. I mean, if you're smart, you scalped and made some money on some certain shit. But
I think that's it was kind of a fad ordeal. I mean, I really don't see that having any legs down the road, especially if the world gets into a turmoil type situation even more than it is right now. I definitely don't see Bitcoins being the way to go by any means.
Right. So then it leaves you to, you know, traditionally the world has turned to metals. But, you know, earlier in the podcast, you were talking about how you think that metals are currently a little bit overvalued because that's what's kind of given these metals a chance to really rise, particularly gold.
Yeah, I
because
think
it's the other store of wealth besides since the beginning of time, really. Gold has been a store of wealth, and it's what people go back to. However, you know, if it gets bad enough, as I've always said, you can't eat gold. You know, you can't put it in a slingshot and fuck somebody up with it. You know, you can't protect your home. You can't make bullets out of it.
Nope.
So it really depends on people wanting it for the prettiness of it, you know, and making jewelry and shit. I mean, back in the old days, there was always some king that wanted gold to make a giant fucking gold cock.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that's why gold is so overvalued today because there's, you know, forever and ever in time, gold has been such a high priced and such a show of wealth and status that everybody wanted it. So now that gold's, you know, over $1,500 for an ounce of gold, it's insane. I mean, it's just a metal.
Yeah. So, and it's a good conductor,
yeah,
you know, but it's
great.
But that value of it as a conductor is going to decrease when the economy slows down.
Yeah, when your next gold in line is silver and it's like $40 an ounce, it's just there's a big window there.
Yeah,
it's a huge window.
So I've been a fan of silver because silver's been as high as $50. Gold is at least pretty close to its highs. I guess it got up to $18.50. It's kind of dropped off that a little bit now, down to $15.50. But silver has been above $50, and what is it now? It's in the 30s, low 30s. So it almost has a chance to double before it even gets to its highs. So
very much.
If you are going to invest in a metal, I think it makes more sense to invest in silver.
Yeah, there's a lot more overhead for your silver investment. You know, it's got a long way to go up, and it definitely can't go too much further down. I mean, when you're sitting at 30, you're definitely not nearly as worried than if you buy something at 1,500 about all the room below you. At that point, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, and for people that know, the historic ratio between gold and silver used to be a lot closer to like 8 to 10 to 1. You know, and right now we're at some 40 to 1, 50 to 1, crazy number that's historically, you know, way off what it used to be. I mean, it used to be very close to that old ratio. So it seems to make sense that silver might need to go up, gold might need to go down. And also, look, I mean, at the point that you're actually exchanging metals for goods and using metals as a currency, it's very difficult to buy a small thing with gold, especially when it's $1,500. How are you going to buy some fucking $3 bread
and
with
then
gold?
everybody's going to carry on point scales on them to know how much this gold piece is they're getting? I got 4 gold shillings that I cut in my basement. Like, what the hell does that even mean?
But silver, you know, you can get those in a variety of different coin sizes. I mean, 1 ounce being $30. So it's a lot easier to kind of use in the system of barter. Now, with large financial transactions, you can't put a fucking pickup truck full of silver when, you know, you could get a briefcase full of gold, obviously. So major financial transactions will still happen with gold in that kind of situation. However, you know, for the everyday people, silver will be more accessible and more valuable. So
I think if it ever gets to the point where we're relying on gold to make major financial transactions, there won't be any financial transactions anyway. Yeah.
Well, it'll be individual barter transactions. It'll be, you know, different people kind of dealing with that. But I think, you know, it seems to me all of this kind of, the government seems to have been kind of preparing for some fucked up shit. You know, all the indefinite detention laws and all that stuff they've kind of passed and all of the allowances of the National Guard. I think they're kind of like, maybe they don't, you know, expect it, but they're preparing for some kind of really fucked up system. Because when it starts to go ugly.
Exactly. And I think that they probably have a pretty good idea of you know, the economy and the world economy and how it's all intertwined and how dangerous of a situation we really are in right now. There's a lot of people that just assume that, you know, we will be okay eventually in time and everything will be great, but people don't realize that once those dominoes start to fall, they're not going to stop falling.
So if you have your money, right, so then we're going to want to start putting a little bit into silver. You know, probably that's what you want to do. And then you want to have some food stores, some basic, simple stuff. Obviously, some different protein powders and some different dried foods maybe. We're not saying, go overboard, because the dominoes haven't started to fall yet. But if this Euro thing, if they can't pull out and everything starts getting worse and worse, that's when you need to start increasingly paying attention to that. And then other things, you probably want to invest in a gun and some bullets.
Probably want to invest in a lot of bullets.
Yeah.
Bullets, I bet bullets have the chance to be used for currency before gold and silver do.
That's an interesting theory. That's a very, at the point where bullets are being used as a currency.
Well, I think at the point where we're using gold and silver for currency, it's not going to matter.
It's all right. So we're just going to skip that stage. You think it's the decline is going to be so fast?
I'm telling you this: that if the world economy goes to such crap that I'm in a situation to where I got to start cutting pieces off my gold bar to barter with people, I'd much rather have about 50 bullets.
All right.
Bartering is taking a new direction at that point.
All right. So maybe if you're under Brian Jimerson's theory, you don't even want to bother with the gold and silver and just go straight to the guns and the dogs. Have a well-trained dog.
Don't forget your beef jerky.
And he likes the beef jerky too. A well-trained dog, some beef jerky, and some bullets. But that seems like, we talk about it now, and it seems, and we can talk about it with a smile. And the only reason we can talk about it with a smile is because it still seems like a fantasy, like it can't really happen. Because we've lived in a time where, people talk about doom and gloom. They talk about this bullshit happening, but it just doesn't ever seem to happen. Somehow everything just seems to keep going on. The fucking merry-go-round keeps spinning, and everybody keeps being like, It's all right. But at a certain point, it could happen.
It definitely could happen, and I'm not here saying that it will. I would prefer it didn't.
Of course.
I think we'd all prefer it doesn't. But, it doesn't hurt to be aware of the situation that, shit can hit the fan immediately. And it's not, like you said, it's not something that's going to happen over a 5-year period. Once it starts to happen, it's going to be here, and it's going to be on your doorstep. There will be war and looting and poverty, and it will be a nasty situation for the entire world.
Yeah, I think I was watching the Game of Thrones season. I'm a huge fan. I've also read all the books. Great show. But there was an interesting line in there from the character Bronn, and they were talking about rounding up all the thieves and killing them before King's Landing went into siege. And he was like, what the thieves do? The thieves do as soon as a nation's under siege is they steal all the food. And then they are the most wealthy people in the state because they have all the food. I mean, at the point where it gets bad, people are going to have organized, lootings of different food sources, and people are going to grab control of that shit.
I'll be leading the way because I want as much stuff as I can, and the government won't be able to provide it for me.
Right. So really, there's going to be a massive grab. That happens kind of quick. So it's better to be more prepared. You also obviously want to, ideal situation, you have some kind of self-sustaining ranch type of system where you can continue to grow food and continue to do stuff. At least, it may flare and then recover, but there may be massive damage and death and destruction during that flare, as things get in kind of a panic situation and then it pulls out. It doesn't mean like we're in Armageddon eternally. It could just get ugly real quick where there's a big food grab, there's a bunch of shit that goes down, and then all of a sudden everything kind of settles down.
If the money goes, chances are your internet's going to go, your phone's going to go, you're going to run out of gas, and it's just going to be a sloppy sight all around.
Yeah. So I guess the idea is, let's hope it doesn't happen. It's certainly the initial dominoes that would say that it is going to happen haven't fallen yet, although they're leaning a little bit. They're tipping, they're wobbling. So best to be a bit safe and kind of prepare that way. Another kind of tangential and interesting thing that's been happening lately, it's almost like the zombie collective consciousness of the world that has risen up lately has created this kind of incidence of these face-biting bath salt zombies.
These idiots.
These idiots. Crazy people to begin with, no doubt.
Yeah.
But they're actually eating people's faces because they've been too high on bath salts.
It's just zombie apocalypse in the beginning. It's insane. These people go buy these quote-unquote spices from legally, might I add, legally, from your local head shop, and they eat it, and next thing you know, they're eating people. And I see this every weekend in Austin, Texas.
Not the eating the people.
Not the eating the people.
But the
eating the people.
But the bath
not
salt
yet.
phenomenon.
No, the bath salt phenomenon. It's incredible to me because people don't care. They're just that it's whatever they can do to get fucked up, and they put things in their system that they don't even know what they're putting in. And everybody says the same thing. I don't react that way. All right, it doesn't do that to me. Well, it just takes one time of getting overheated and turning into a mobster gobster, eating somebody's face that you're done. You know what I mean? If these people don't care, it's literally the stupidest thing that could ever happen.
It is. So for people who don't know what these things actually are, bath salts or spices, you can go to your head shop and get them. And what it is, it's a cat and mouse game that these companies are playing with the FDA and the legal system. So basically, something like real MDMA has been outlawed, but it has a very strong effect on your serotonin mechanism. So what they will try and do is they'll try and say, okay, and there's tons of things, not just MDMA, but a bunch of things that give you this kind of euphoric feeling that these recreational drug users are chasing. So they outlaw a variety of chemical structures. And then, so what these other companies do is they make analogs to these chemical structures, which are not that exact chemical structure. Mm-hmm. And because it hasn't been discovered yet, it's still legal. Mm-hmm. So it'll have maybe a 1-year run. It's completely unsafe, completely untested. But they say it's a bath salt because you're not supposed to ingest it. So they're allowed to sell it
as long as they say not for human consumption.
Yeah, so they sell it as something that you put in your bathtub. Obviously, it's in a fucking tiny little amount. Like that's going to dissolve in a bath.
In a clear pill.
But it's a clear pill. But it's a game. It's a game they're playing by creating these chemicals that they say not for human consumption that people eat, and when they eat, they get this euphoric feeling. Now that feeling is nothing like. What is that?
It's not mine.
I don't know. Well, it is yours.
Apparently, that's mine.
But so they're chasing this euphoric feeling, and what ends up happening is, unlike the real drugs. These drugs last maybe 30 minutes of positive feeling and 48 hours of
just being
hell?
A crack addict. I mean, just can't sleep.
Massive
jittery,
dehydration,
your
body
paranoid,
overheating.
Yeah, and they kind of refer to it as like a cocaine psychosis, to where your body heats up so much from the inside that it starts to kill your organs and starts to fry your brain. And really, like in the case of the Miami case, where the guy was chewing on the other guy's face and literally ate everything but this man's goatee. He was pretty much dead before he was killed. The cops approached the man, and he looked up at him with human flesh hanging from his mouth and growled. And they shot him, and he growled again, so they had to put him down. I mean, if that's not a mobster gobster, I don't know what is.
Jesus. So, and the problem is, it's probably, all right, so you take one of these bath salts once, and you feel like shit, and then but the problem is, you feel so bad, and the initial feeling was so good that you end up taking, fuck it, I'll take it again. Mm-hmm. I'll take it again. And then you're not hydrating. And then all of a sudden, you've been up for 5 days on bath salts, and your body's at 108 degrees. Mm-hmm. You have no fluid left at all. And for some reason, maybe it is the collective consciousness of the world, talking about zombies and zombie apocalypse this and zombie show that, Walking Dead, all of this stuff. Whatever it is, whether it's the collective consciousness rising or if there's some kind of nutrient in eyeballs or brains that these people are after, maybe just the pure liquid of somebody else's face.
I mean, it's probably just dumbs you down to the most natural instincts of, kill and eat, and that's it. They said the guy in Miami, I believe I was reading this correctly, last night, he was completely naked and stripped down, but he had his Bible on him. And if they interviewed his mom or his grandma or something, and she says, "Oh, he was always such a good boy. He always carried his Bible around everywhere." So, I mean, just to think of like the mental perspective of what this guy is going through when he starts to, quote unquote, turn into a zombie. He grabs his Bible, something he used to carry around all the time when he was a little kid, and then he gets naked and goes out and starts trying to find people to kill. It's a very, very frightening thought process. Yeah. I mean, it just has to be horrible.
And the idea that, in an economic collapse, certainly drug use is definitely gonna hit a rise, I would say. Yeah, especially sure. These, people in a dire situation, people looking for some kind of escape.
Drugs, alcohol, and sex.
Alcohol. Yeah, exactly. Those are going to be the reprieves from this. So this idea, all of a sudden, I used to completely scoff at this zombie apocalypse thing because it was just a fucking joke. I wasn't even. But then all of a sudden, you're facing a potential economic collapse where drug use and it's really easy to make these bath salts.
It's really easy and it's really insanely cheap.
Yeah. So so the market could basically get flooded with these fucking things, and maybe they figure out one that feels better for a little longer and doesn't have quite so bad a come down, but it still fucking causes the overheating. And maybe that floods the market and people are like, fucking life sucks anyways. I'm fucking starving. This is fucking miserable. I'm worried about my life. And everybody starts taking this and holy shit. All of a sudden, there's something close to fucking zombies out there trying to eat people.
If shit hits the fan, I may invest in some bath salts. It may just be the way I decide to go out. Who knows?
If I see you coming with flesh dripping on your face, I am not asking questions, right?
No questions asked.
I'm not asking any questions. Well, this has been an interesting conversation for sure. I think at the end of the day, the moral is, we're not telling people to freak out. We're not telling people to, stop what you're doing, because that's certainly not going to help matters. Go out, live your life, spend your money, do your thing, but keep it in the back of your mind. Keep one eye on the Euro crisis. See if these countries start falling out. Keep an eye on everything that's there. And then, maybe it makes sense to buy some silver. Definitely makes sense to have some other tangible assets. I mean, a gun is always going to be valuable, at any given point. You'll get your money out of a gun in a bad financial situation.
I agree.
If you have a great dog, maybe you think about not fucking spaying and neutering him, so you make some more dogs, because dogs are going to be valuable. Start thinking about little things that you can do, even in your residential area, even if you live in a duplex. Little things that you can kind of get, and have a little food, a couple days worth of food. Buy some Vegas shakes from onit.com. Get some things together that just in case that'll sustain you for a couple weeks. A couple tubs of Vega. You'll be a little hungry, but you can live off that shit. It's got the complete nutrients in it. It's things like that aren't going to be crazy where you're packing your freezer and getting cans and like all kinds of nutty stuff. But have some water, have some stuff you can mix in it so that you can at least ride out a situation without going into a panic.
Yeah,
and then,
panic never helped anybody. You definitely don't want to do panic.
Yeah, so just kind of keep an eye out. And if you see somebody with flesh dripping off their face, be careful. Although there was a hoax that somebody did in a park in Florida.
Oh yeah.
Somebody went to some like ghetto park and he put like blood and stuff off his face.
It's the worst joke ever.
It was terrible. He started walking around and growling and stuff, and like all these people just scattered, just boom, scattered. And then
the dumbest man ever.
Finally some gangster just pulled a gun on him and he's like, oh, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Just joking. Worst joke
but that's
ever.
a bad joke. We don't need it. We don't need to do that because people are going to start shooting those people on sight.
So I'm one of them.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, I appreciate you coming on here, man. Is there any way people can get a hold of you at Twitter, Facebook, or anything like that?
Yeah, you can get a hold of me on Facebook or on Twitter. You can just send me a personal message. My screen name is Bignatix, Bignatx.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a good conversation, and we'll keep an eye on things as they come down the line.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.
Thanks.